I've had a couple new buyers come in this week that wanted to think about buying a home in the next 2 or 3 months, and they decided that now's the time to start getting serious about it. So I've had, actually there were 3 different buyers, and they were different circumstances, but they had the same basic problem. They just weren't sure what their income was, and they actually knew what their income was really, but the problem is that they weren't aware that you could not use all their income to qualify for a loan. So it's very, very important that you think about these things ahead of time. That's why it's so very, very important to get pre-approved just as early in the game as you can. That way, if you've got any problems that you're facing, you might have time to do something about it. But just to give you an example, the first buyer had an unusual situation. They were working a lot of overtime and making quite a bit of money, but the problem is they'd only been on their job for a little over a year. And the basic rule for overtime is that they average your overtime over 2 years. So if you don't have a 2-year history with your current job and the overtime, they can't use it. They can't use the overtime. Now, you can, just for example, use any work that's required. So if they're guaranteed to have a 50-hour work week and they get paid overtime for that extra 10 hours, that's no problem. They can use the 50 hours and use the time and a half for the overtime. But if they're working 55 hours, but they're really only guaranteed 40 hours, they'll only use 40 hours. They can't use the 50 or the 55. So that's the first person, is they had a lot of overtime, but it's not going to be countable because they've only been on their job less than 2 years. The second one that came in, it's a little different situation, is they've worked 2 different part-time jobs. And the way that part-time jobs work is if you have a 2-year history of working part-time jobs, you can count the part-time job. But on one of the part-time jobs, they only had about 6 months history, so they're only going to be able to count one of the jobs in their income as far as qualifying purposes. So if you don't have a 2-year history on any part-time job, if they had 3 part-time jobs, you could count all 3 if they'd been on all 3 jobs for 2 years. And it's not even a requirement that it has to be the same job, but you have to have a solid history of working for at least 2 years on a part-time job. So that one was kind of disturbing. They were very disappointed because it just is, their income just from the one part-time job just doesn't work to buy a house. So they're going to have to kind of regroup a little bit. So I was the bearer of bad news on that, but at least they understand where they're at, and I told them whatever I can do to help them, I will. The third one was the couple was self-employed, and their situation was, you know, they're making a lot of money, but the problem is they have a lot of expenses in that business. And even though they've been in the business for quite a while, if you don't have your net Schedule C income, that's what they look at to see what kind of home you can afford. It's based on your net Schedule C income. So if you have a $200,000 gross income, but you have $150,000 of expenses, so your net income on your Schedule C is only $50,000, and you've got a couple car payments and stuff, all of a sudden you don't have a whole lot of qualifying income. So it's very important when you're self-employed to see what your net Schedule C income. So that's one of the first things I always ask somebody. Get those tax returns out, the last 2 returns, because that's usually what they do. They average your income over the last 2 years, but it's your net Schedule C income that they net, or that they average. They can't use the gross in any way. Now there are a couple things they can add back in if you've taken some depreciation, or sometimes if you have some mileage expenses. Sometimes you can add part of that back in so you have more income than you might think for qualifying. But anyway, just to let you know, buying a home is not necessarily hard, but on the other hand, there's rules that you have to go by. So when you're working and it's anything other than just kind of a straight W-2 wages for 40 hours a week, if you're working a lot of overtime or if you're self-employed, you need to know about those things before you start looking at houses and get a price range in mind, because you want to make sure that you have enough qualifying income for the type of house that you're looking for. Anyway, I hope that's useful. We're always here to help you get more information about buying a home, what it takes. We're always here to help and answer your questions. If you have anything that you want to ask us, you can always reach me at 405-210-5319. Text me, call me, email me, whatever you want to do. I'm here to help. Thanks again. It's Kyle No with First United Realty, and we love to help people buy a home, and we'll like to help you too. Thanks again. Have a great day out there, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.